Welcome to the TheXTPodcast, your ultimate destination for valuable insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories that will transform the way you experience business, governance, and life. Join your host, Ashutosh, as he dives deep into three distinct editions: Customer Experience Edition, where industry leaders discuss CX strategies, product brand, employee experience, digital innovations, and best practices for improving customer engagement, retention, and loyalty.
What happens when world-class CX meets purpose-driven leadership? In this episode of the XT podcast, I sit down with Jamey Lutz, a leading authority in experience management and cultural transformation with more than 3 decades of leadership across industries including hospitality, banking, and healthcare. Jamey began as Director of Quality at the Ritz-Carlton, Palm Beach, playing a pivotal role in the brand's historic 1999 Malcolm Baldrige Award win. He later returned as Performance Improvement Leader for the Americas, leading guest experience initiatives across 26 properties. As Senior Vice President of Performance Excellence at Atlantic Capital Bank, he drove a purpose-led culture transformation that helped fuel 81% year-on-year revenue growth. Most recently, as Managing Director of Patient Experience at ChenMed, he led the redesign of patient-facing processes and listening systems, delivering measurable gains in satisfaction. He is also the author of Pathway to Purpose, Big Ideas for Fueling Irresistible Corporate Cultures, and currently runs Jamey Lutz Consulting, helping organizations build performance cultures rooted in values, service, and engagement. In this episode, expect insights like why customer and team member experience are two sides of the same coin, how to turn noble purpose into revenue driving reality, how Ritz Carlton taught him to lead with principles over processes, and what it takes to transform a reactive service culture into a proactive one. This is a conversation that cuts through the noise and gets to the heart of what truly drives irresistible experiences for customers and employees. Let's dive in. Thank you, Jamey, for gracing us with your presence on this episode today. Really appreciate your availability and presence.
Well, Ash, it's the honor's all mine. I've been looking forward to being a part of this. I've watched multiple episodes of your podcast, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. So thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. Before I have asked all the questions that I have in mind for you, Jamey, I'm very curious about what made you focus on CX. CX is the new buzzword, but I genuinely feel it is way beyond a buzzword. And in my interactions with you, I have seen that we resonate on that as well. So I would love to know first what made you connect with CX, pursue this as a focus, and why CX?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ash. And I've been in CX for, my gosh, I'm aging myself here for, I don't know, over 30 years. And there's a part of me, Ash, that wishes I could go back in time and maybe be a psychology major, because I'm always interested in what makes people tick and why people behave the way they do. And that obviously is an essential ingredient when it comes to customer experiences. I think sometimes we think we understand customers or patients or whatever realm you're in, but there's a psychology behind it. Always gravitated towards creating experiences and creating scenarios where customers are happy and their behaviors lead them to do things that we want them to do, right? Like refer us to keep coming back, we get more share of wallet. But more than just the business outcomes, I've just always enjoyed making people happy. And that's really what customer experience is all about, right?
Beautiful, Jamie. Nobody summarized it as succinctly and as simply as you did. You love making people happy, and you have pretty much understood through the experiences that it's the psychology, it's the instinct, that's the emotion at play, and not the action, and which is the core of all that we do in CX. I love that, Jamie. In fact, one of the things I noticed in your career so far of close to 3 decades is that you have really crisscrossed several industries, which is very rare to find in one person. You've worked in banking, hospitality, healthcare, and more. And therefore, I'm curious, did you find any common threads that define great CX across these sectors?
Yeah, I absolutely think that there are common threads across all industries when it comes to customer experience. I think people I think people in general want to feel from a customer service perspective that they're making progress. So whatever it is, whether they're buying a loaf of bread or whether they're engaging with a another organization to create value for their customers, there's always a sense that we need to be making progress. And so I think that's a big one. One of your former guests on the show, I believe it was Sean Albertson, talked about friction.
Yes.
And I love that term too. I know you had mentioned how much you like that. I think we want to create across every industry's experiences where our customers can easily navigate and flow from step to step. That could be digitally or it could be in person. It doesn't really matter. People want to have an easy, seamless experience with zero friction. And so I think that's a second one. And then just providing value. So I don't believe that anyone buys or purchases any product or service unless they somehow think it's going to improve their life or the lives of a loved one. And so, part of that is they have to sense that we're providing value to them. And that's, I think, crosses all industries, crosses all sectors. People want to feel like that the money or investment that they're making is of value and that they're getting that value in return. So those would be some of the things that I think are kind of consistent across whatever industry. There's some nuances though, obviously. And, I have had the opportunity, been really blessed to work in multiple industries. From a hospitality perspective, I think people are expecting anticipatory kind of service, right? When I was at
Sure.
Ritz-Carlton, one of the 3 steps of service is anticipate the needs of the guest. We're going to provide a warm welcome, which we should do always, but then we want to anticipate what their needs are. We want to have our radar on and antenna up to understand what are the specific things that are going to engage our customers and make them happy. And then, of course, we always want to provide a fond farewell. So, I think from a hospitality standpoint, one of the things is anticipatory service and probably personalized service. What works for every other guest or every other customer is not necessarily what every other guest is going to be looking for. In banking, there's nothing that's more sacred than our money. And I think people want a sense of my money is safe, that it's secure,
Yes.
and that I can know that it's going to be there when I need it. In the retail space, I think generally, again, digitally, in person, you want it to be speedy. You want to be able to do it quickly. Healthcare, I think, is different in some respects because it's all about our lives. It's about our bodies and our health. And so we want to have confidence that the service we're being provided by doctors and nurses is world class and that they have a high level of expertise.
Beautiful. What I observed from what you said, Jamie, which again is unique, is that your lens is a lot more holistic when you look at these industries and when you talk about CX. And by that, I mean most CX leaders either come from a tech background and that therefore they have a CX tech focus to transformation. Some of them come from customer service, customer support, customer success kind of background, and therefore they have a services support mindset to CX. A few of them come from corporate strategy, marketing, and therefore they have a growth angle to it. So retention, cross sell, upsell becomes the focus. But when you spoke about CX, what I could gather is your language was neither numbers nor growth, retention. Of course, these are all important. I'm certain in your mind you of course gave importance to these, but your focus was on the value, and what the customers perceive as being important for each of these sectors, whether it is money for banking or health for healthcare or speed for retail, as you rightly mentioned. I wonder, in your experience when you worked across these sectors, has this background of psychology helped you? Has that background helped you go deeper? And if so, which all specific areas you invest in order to dive deeper into the psyche of the customer?
Yeah, and again, kind of going back to the psychology piece, there's a quote, and I don't know who said it. I wish I said it, but I certainly didn't. It's real simple, but it's simply that data makes you think, but emotions make you act. So data makes you think,
Wow,
emotions make you act.
beautiful.
And data is absolutely essential because it helps us make decisions. But just because we make a decision doesn't mean we're going to act on it. And emotion, though, is really what, for good or bad, is what drives us to purchase or not purchase, to select a particular company or not, to come back or not. It's the stories behind it. And so one of the things, again, that I found kind of cascades all industries is going beyond the data is, are we creating emotional connections with our customers in such a way that they will have those business outcomes that we're looking for? And so I'm just a huge proponent of leveraging the data, because again, it's absolutely essential. But really what makes us move and what makes our customers move is that psychology, that emotional connection to it. Because again, I think at the end of the day, people don't buy or purchase or invest if they don't feel like it's going to create a positive output for them. And generally that's an emotional kind of experience.
I cannot agree more, Jamey. In fact, that brings me to a catch 22, which I have in my mind whenever I work on CX transformation programs is there's the data lets us perceive lot of inputs on how customers are acting on the ground, and the emotions at best are captured in scores. So even the emotions are translated into numbers or metrics, but I've seen a much less rigor on ethnographic research or sentiment analysis, and there's a far more tech led initiative around all this that we are referring to right now. So I wonder in my mind um, whether the numbers, chasing the score is making us far more mechanical in our own approach to driving CX, which demands emotions, or it is by design. The success is measured in numbers, everyone's chasing numbers. And so this is the be all and end all of it. And therefore we have to chase. There's no other way out. Do you think there is a reason to choose between the two, or there is a way out to do both at the same time?
Yeah, that's another great question. I think there's certainly room for both, but I think if you lead with data, people are going to chase the numbers maybe more than they are the experience. And so, as an example, organizations that I've worked with in the past had to be very careful about. And I'm a big proponent of using metrics for incentive purposes, for reward purposes, but you have to be very wary that that can be circumvented in many ways. So
Yes.
organizations that count on surveys, right, whether it's, phone interviews or digital, which is the way that, most organizations do it today, people will go towards what they're being recognized and rewarded for. And so you have to be very careful that there's not gaming that goes on of gaming the system.
Yes.
And so I'm a huge proponent that we reward and recognize those things that we really want and need. But if the goal is simply around the number and it's not around the experience, then that's going to create a kind of false narrative on exactly what your customers are experiencing. So as an example, and I've heard of organizations that they only send out Google review invites for people that give them high scores. And that sounds great in theory, but you're not necessarily, if you're only going to do that, you're not getting a realistic view of your entire customer population. You're only getting feedback from those that think positively of you. And while that feels good and it may look good digitally, it's not a recipe for continuous growth and development.
Can't agree more, Jamie. What in your experience have been the best practices that helps us avoid this gaming of systems and score chasing?
Yeah, well, obviously, you want to hire people that understand the underlying purpose and goals of the organization. And so that's a big piece of, are we hiring the right people that have a customer first and an employee engagement kind of mindset? And I always go back to stories. I think we have to make sure that we're connecting the data with customers and the actual experiences that they're going through. And I've heard of organizations, and I love this, that when the executive team meets, they have an empty chair at every executive meeting that represents the customer so that they don't forget, yes,
Beautiful.
outcome of great customer service is profitability and revenue and wallet share and all those things that are absolutely essential to run a business. You have to have it. But what's truly driving it and what's essential is the customers that are making it happen. So I am a huge proponent of telling those stories. So
Nice.
if you're getting open-ended feedback from your customers, which you probably are through your surveys and through Google reviews and other social media, share those stories, share the bad ones, but also celebrate the great ones. Because if you reinforce, that's what we're looking for. The data says that they're satisfied, but what does that mean? Here's an example where Susie blew it out of the water, went way beyond the norm, and created an incredible experience for this customer. Let's celebrate her. Here's an example of one where we missed the mark and we're going to miss it sometimes. What can we learn from that? How can we make sure that doesn't happen again? So I think it always goes back to like the human element, the psychology, which we keep talking about, is like making sure that people feel and sense what the data is telling us.
Fantastic. In fact, that brings me to an important chicken or egg dilemma, which I think all of us have faced in the CX transformation path, which is CX investments drive ROI. All the CX programs, successful CX programs and projects have proven this, that they do definitely drive ROI. And if I have to summarize, either it will be retentions or expansions or acquisitions, but one way or the other, there'll be ROI coming in. So CX investments do drive ROI, but then ROI is needed to justify CX investments. Now it's a catch 22. Now, how do you break this cycle, Jamey? And in your experience, what has helped you break this cycle?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. And I think particularly I found it, I've been with organizations that were private, and while I was there, they went public. And that becomes even more challenging because the the stakeholders, the shareholders are expecting instant
Yes.
success. And ROI on customer experience in some cases can be pretty quick, but generally it's going to take time. So it's really, really difficult, I think, in public types of organizations. But you're right, it's the chicken and egg thing. I think it's possible to create great customer experience when you don't have a C suite that supports it, but it's really hard. It's really, really hard
Nice.
because they are the ones that ultimately are making the
Exactly.
decision
Yes.
about the way that we invest and the way that that we engage with our customers. And by that same token, the way that they're treating and engaging with employees too. So I call it the tone at the top. I think the tone really needs to be invested in and bought in by the highest level of the organization. I used to work with a mortgage company that was 100% customer centric. They understood it. And one of the things that they did is we had a mantra before every single internal meeting, not external meetings, but every single internal meeting. It could have been just me and you. Before we start the meeting, we would say this mantra: the only sustainable advantage in business is world-class service.
Wow.
And the CEO understood it, and he was relentless in a good way, absolutely relentless. Anything else than providing gold standard service was unacceptable. And so I think in those types of scenarios, there is a sense of patience and willingness and understanding that, hey, the ROI will come. It will absolutely come. If we're treating our customers in an exceptional and consistently positive way, the ROI will come. But I don't know, Ash, that I've got, in the absence of that and the buy-in from the top, I don't honestly know that I've got a good answer for you. Because it's going to be tough treading. For right or wrong, organizations that I choose to work with or consult with, that's kind of an unwritten kind of requirement in my mind is, look, we can create all kinds of incremental improvements in our minds, but they're not going to be sustained if the top level doesn't understand it. They don't cascade it down to the management. And everyone in the organization needs to understand how what they're doing attributes to the customer centric purpose and values of the organization. So sorry, I don't know that I've got a great answer for that. I think it's really, really an uphill climb.
Absolutely, Jamey. I believe nobody does, because what you're saying is a common understanding amongst all the CX leaders. You are absolutely right. It's a top down initiative. But then that brings me to a question for which I have never had an answer. An additional question, and I'll see if you have one as well. Do you think there is merit in defining an org structure where CX leadership reports into the CEO or the CXO rather than report into a functional or departmental unit, be it marketing, customer success, or otherwise, because that possibly would enable what you were hinting at earlier that it needs to be a top down sponsorship. Do you think there is a org structure led initiative that would enable this, or you feel it doesn't matter, the reporting is not the challenge, it's more about the top down alignment, or a senior leadership alignment, or both? What do you think would be preferred?
Yeah, that's another really good question. And I think it's something that my approach has changed over time. Like earlier in my career, and by the way, in all the industries, I've reported into marketing, I've reported in HR, I've reported into operations. I've reported into someone in the C-suite. I've reported in the CEO. But I think the ideal kind of structure is that you are reporting into either the CEO or someone in the C-suite that wields a lot of influence. Because again, you're likely to spin your wheels even with the very best intentions if others don't see that persons or function as something that is non-negotiable at the very highest levels of the organization. And I've been in experiences where, let's say I report into marketing, that's fine in theory, and it's nothing against the person that leads marketing, but that person may not have the visibility and the panache to drive that non-negotiable commitment to, we're going to move heaven and earth, we're going to do everything that we can possibly do, unless it's unethical, immoral, or illegal. We're going to do everything we can to provide that incredible service for our customers. And it's not because people don't wish or think that way, but they may not have the influence or the visibility to make that happen and to bring that to bear.
I cannot agree more. You're so right, Jamie. In fact, on an add-on note to that, I would love to ask if you have experienced this as well. That even if you, as a CX leader in an organization, know the right strategy and the right roadmap to drive the transformation necessary, even if you have all the clarity and you're reporting into the CEO, bringing in an external consultant to voice out the very strategies and roadmaps you have in mind to the CEO actually helps you get the buy-in much earlier and faster than you individually having to try it internally. Have you seen that as a possibility? And not that the external consultant is bringing in necessarily anything new. It is basically bringing in your voice up, or helping you enhance your own voice. Have you experienced that by any chance?
And I don't just say that. I know you're a consultant, I'm a consultant. I think there's a time and place for consultants. But yes, 100%. I think there's a saying that says it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame.
Nice.
So if you're in the frame, like I can't see the picture, I got to step back. And I think we get blinders on, and it's of no fault of our own. Like, let me give you an example. Like, my parents came and visited me a couple of months ago, and they pointed out to me, they pointed to the ceiling in the house. They said, do you realize that your fire alarm mechanism has fallen down? It's kind of hanging by the wires. And I'm like, no, like I did not, I never noticed it. And apparently it had been hanging like that for a couple of months, but I was in the house. I was in there every day. I just didn't notice it. I had kind of blinders on unintentionally. And I think a consultant can bring a new perspective, a fresh perspective, and they may say exactly the same thing that you've been saying to the CEO or someone in the C-suite. But the fact that they have, great experience, they may have insights and provide benchmarks from what other organizations are doing, and the fact that it's just a fresh voice can absolutely kind of jumpstart that. And so I'm a big proponent of that, when it makes sense. But I would not be a proponent of the CEO or the C-suite just using that as a check. Okay, we're checklist. We're going to bring a CEO or a consultant, and then we can say we've done this customer service thing, and then we'll move on to the next big program of the month. And so again, uphill battle without the tone from the top, but a third party can always provide, I think, really rich insights that someone that's in the frame all the time may not be able to see.
Yes. In fact, in India, Jamie, we often quote chickens of your own farm can be equated to pulses and lentils. They are undervalued. They are never given as much value as you would give, to chickens of others. It's the mindset that, if you are in-house, you may not be heard as seriously as probably somebody else coming in from outside, and I used to feel this cannot be the case in a professional setup myself. And therefore, for my own go to market, Jamie, I used to not consider the personas who are CX leaders in their organization, who are already proficient at what they do, have already led transformations, and I've seen that one external voice just lets them move forward fast and quickly. And this has been that one thing which you cannot logically rationalize.
Yeah, and I think also as CX professionals, meaning not us as consultants, but folks that are knee deep in the organization as CX professionals, I think part of their role, our role, is to leverage and be very strategic. If my voice inside is not being heard, it's not, I don't want to take it personally. It's not necessarily that I don't
Yes.
have the expertise and the understanding. Like you said, I may have done it with a lot of other organizations, but it doesn't matter if they won't listen to you. And so being
Yes.
strategic and thinking, well, maybe they need to hear a different voice. Maybe I need to share this book, or maybe they need to listen to this podcast, or maybe they need to talk with someone that's like-minded that's outside the organization. I think that part of great CX leaders is looking for ways to get that voice through so that, others can see the value in it.
Perfect. Thanks for confirming, Jamie, that you will be a part of my project, the next project that I take on as an external voice, helping me drive the program forward. So thank you in advance. In fact, Jamie, have such a uniquely diverse profile amidst all the sectors that you're focused on and all the excellent work that you've done. One additional work that you did and which has fascinated me is you have led culture transformation initiatives as well in multiple organizations, which is another area where where I feel personally that CX leaders don't often invest as much as they should. How much do you feel EX is important for CX, and what's the secret to creating a customer centric culture?
Yeah. I actually wrote a book called Pathway to Purpose, and the subtitle is Big Ideas for Fueling Irresistible Corporate Cultures. And I think the best organizations in the world create a group of employees that find you unleavable, and customers create customers that find you irresistible. So the premise of my consultancy is really around the intersection of customer experience, employee engagement, and organizational culture. And many, many years ago, there was a an article written. I'm trying to remember what organization wrote it, but it was called the Service Profit Chain. And it essentially says, and they proved it, with a number of different research studies, that happy employees are more likely and generally are going to provide great service to their customers, which is going to then lead to profitability, organizational growth, and desired business outcomes. Now, that's true, but that really 20 years ago or so sparked my interest in understanding of you can go after great customer service all you want, but if there's not a passion and a desire and an ability from the employees at every level of the organization, then that's not going to materialize. And so if we don't take care of our employees and therefore our organizational culture, you're going to be spinning your wheels when it comes to customer service, because the
Yes.
employees are the one that are delivering the service. So despite all your best intentions, you gotta make sure that your employees are engaged, that they understand how their individual purposes and values align with the organization's purpose and values, and that they are rewarded and recognized for delivering on those service behaviors that are so important. So they're intricately intertwined, I think, in ultimately kind of creating a service experience that our customers find irresistible.
Lovely. I would definitely love to read your book, Jamie. And to all the listeners and viewers of the podcast, I will be sharing the link to Jamie's book in the description of the video and all the audio. So please take a look. I definitely recommend that. I would want to read it as well. And you can expect a quick review of the book soon on the channel too. But that brings me to another question, Jamie. One of the advice I received from one of the professors in my MBA course, and this is very prominently etched in my memory, which is he said, idea in itself is zero, idea plus action is opportunity, and idea plus action plus commitment is business. And the reason I call this out is I've seen CX insights alone are of no use unless they are acted on. And I've seen that you have worked a lot on or in the space of CX measurement and analytics. And in your experience, what has led you to ensure that the functional stakeholders, the functional leaders, the peers in the leadership group, they take these insights seriously and act on it so that the final impact does translate on the ground?
Yeah, good question. And I think in many ways, what you just described are reasons that consultants sometimes have they're viewed in a negative light because they provide this huge ream of output. It just collects, as we know, we've heard it, it collects debt, it collects dust on, on someone's desk, and it never really gets executed on. I think a great a CX leader too has a responsibility to make sure that all of the data and all of the inputs are being executed on. And I think there's a number of ways to really focus on that. But again, it's really staying in front of those that have decision making power in the organization. Again, I think most organizations have really good intentions around customer service, and intuitively they understand how important it is. But you get in the midst of the whirlwind of the organization, and there's lots of other priorities too. And if those customer experience priorities, if we agree that those are essential, if those don't get sequenced in a way that they're being addressed now versus when it's too late and you got to completely start over whatever CX work was done, then you're just going to be spinning your wheels. So I think making sure that, again, you can link ROI to CX, that there's an understanding, middle management, senior management on the board, that by focusing on customer experience strategies, that it's going to move the needle organizationally for the company, and therefore needs to be sequenced and prioritized in a way that it demonstrates how important it is. I think that's the really important thing, because again, I don't think it's a matter of necessarily folks not seeing the value in it. It's just with the whirlwind, there's all kinds of other things that are kind of being prioritized. So I think great CX leaders have to keep pushing. They have to keep pushing. They have to continue to make your case. And again, I know I've delved on this a lot, but again, what's going to move them is for them to constantly sense and hear and feel the pain that our customers are going through when we don't address their issues.
Yes.
And not just with a Band-Aid, but that we're addressing systemically what's causing it and how we can fix it once and for all going forward.
In fact, you raised a very important point, Jamey, and I know that you have personally led initiatives to cover this specific aspect, which is of negative customer experience. I mean, we have talked a lot about the positive customer experiences, but be it at Ritz-Carlton or Wells Fargo or ChenMed, I'm certain you would have had so many moments of leading service recovery efforts. So of all the work that you have done and all the learnings that you would have had, if you were to share specific nuggets of insights and advice for us as professionals in terms of what would be that gold standard or best practice to turn a negative customer experience into a relationship building moment, any advice for us?
Yeah. Well, and first off, just to prove intuitively we know it's important, but there is a lot of research out there that would say that if a customer has an issue and we're able to resolve it in an exceptional way, they will actually become more loyal to us than if the problem had never occurred to start with. There's lots of
Amazing.
evidence of that. I'm sure you know that too. Kind of being a little bit humorous, though we don't ever intentionally create problems, there's hope, right? When those happen, and I think we've all experienced it, like we were really upset at something, and oh my goodness, they did something amazing to turn us around, and they authentically helped us understand that they cared. I'll sing their praises forever, and I'll be much more forgiving of them in the future. So it's obviously important. But I think in terms of like gold nuggets, one of the things that I learned from a really good friend of mine, his name's Chip Bell. He's written probably 20, 25 customer experience books, one of the top
Wow.
recognized customer experience keynote speakers in the world. He once shared with me that when someone's really upset, our natural gravitation is to try to speak logically to them right away. But the fact of the matter is, and I think he's right, when someone is upset, they are in an actual state of insanity. Now that sounds crazy, right? But if you try to talk logically to someone that is upset, you're going to be highly unsuccessful. And so you have to listen. You have to let them get it off of their chest. And yes, you may have experienced that same complaint 100 times, but it's their first time. And so you have to show empathy, you have to show patience and demonstrate that you care. And once you're able to get them past that point of insanity, then you can start to speak with them logically. And I think another important piece is involve them in the solution. And people will be like, oh my gosh, don't do that. They'll ask for everything. Well, they may, but it's still an opportunity for you to say, you know what, we can't do that. But what you said earlier, now that might be something that we could potentially do. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So I think getting people from insanity to a state of willingness to listen and then involving them in the solution is, from the days way long ago when I was actually having these conversations as a frontline person in the hotel or wherever I used to work, to now I've seen it be incredibly successful. Now, is it 100% successful? No, because some people, as we know, you're never going to be able to make them happy. But at least you can tell them that or at least you can show that you care and that you're listening and that you want to support and assist them.
Wow. Jamey, I mean, we've been speaking for the last almost an hour, and amidst all the lovely insights and inputs you have given, I genuinely feel this is the singularly most important insight you gave us.
Well, thank
Because I genuinely feel organizations don't engineer the service recovery processes the right way, especially in the world of AI and chatbots and automation, where automation first is a default strategy. I feel your input is guiding us to say if there is such a extreme situation, then it should be in person first, because
Yes.
without which the emotions can never be understood and the listening can never be enabled. So lovely, and thank you so much for sharing that rich insight with us, Jamey. Really appreciate that input. In fact, an add-on to that is I've often seen we get lost in this maze of NPS and CSAT and such metrics. Given your last answer and possibly all the work that you've done so far, do you feel there are some under the radar metrics which are often not talked about as much as the NPS and CSAT, and which for anyone in CX are equally important or rather more important as well, and which one should always strive to focus on and drive data on? Any advice on that as well, Jamey?
Yeah, and as we talked about before, I do think there are nuances between industries, but I think in general, particularly if it's more than just an interaction or a transaction, if it's more than a transaction, then I think this concept of trust is really, really important. So yes, of course, OSAT, NPS, likely to recommend, those have their time and place, but I think something around the lines of, do you trust that we have your best interest in mind? Do you trust that we are doing everything in our power to provide a great service experience for you? I think trust is really, really important. Another one is and we mentioned this at the beginning, part of every customer experience is, did you experience positive momentum? Like, did you achieve as the customer what you had hoped to achieve? And so I think some question around, did we support and help you achieve what you came to us for? And again, that's going to depend on kind of what business you're in, what industry, but did you help me make positive momentum? And I think somehow articulating that in a survey question can be really, really valuable as well.
Beautiful. I know I can keep on asking a lot of questions to you, but we have only limited time. But this does mean that then this calls for another episode, Jamey, because I feel that I have not truly got all the insights that you could possibly share with the likes of us. So I would love to chase you for another episode. But before we close this one, Jamey, I can't help but ask you about the future of CX. I mean, with all that you've done, 3 decades, it's such a long time. You would have seen multiple industries that you worked in shift, transform, be disrupted. And now, with the advancement in technology where digital is democratized, it's no more a differentiator itself. Where do you see the CX is moving forward into with AI, ChatGPT, Gen AI looming large over us? what do you think is the future of CX?
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of dynamic, right? Because obviously, most anyone would answer that question. Well, AI is absolutely gonna, and it is. It's gonna change so much. But I think we have to be really careful about how we're leveraging it. I mean, I think from a optimization and efficiency standpoint, it's incredible. It's amazing what it's going to be able to do, and helping us really understand our customers or our patients, whichever realm we happen to be in. That's really, really critical. But I think in the midst of AI and technology, there's more and more of this thirst for personalization too. I think people do not, have not and will not want to feel like numbers in the future.
Yes.
They want to feel like they are um, valued and recognized for their unique desires and wants. And so, what AI will not be able to do, at least not in any time soon, is be able to sense and provide that level of emotion and passion and desire to help our customers. And so I think while leveraging technology is essential, it absolutely is. We don't want to lose sight of how can we personalize and create experiences that are unique and differentiated, not based upon an entire customer base, but based upon factors within each of those customer groups. So I think personalization is going to be a huge differentiator for those organizations that are able to figure out how to do that, because no one wants to be viewed as the same as everyone else.
Of course.
And so my needs and desires are going to be different. And organizations that are able to understand that and create experiences that nuance that are the ones that are going to win in the end.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamey. I am now becoming a slightly bit more selfish. And although I said I've already asked you one last question, I can't help but ask another, which is the last question now. Now that you talked about the future of CX, is there any myth in CX that you would like to debunk? A general assumption that's made about CX, a general common understanding, which actually is a misunderstanding and therefore needs to be debunked.
Yeah, as I've worked with organizations, this one has become more and more apparent to me. There's something, I don't know if you're familiar with kind of future back thinking versus present forward. And so
Elaborate, please.
present forward would simply be, and there's nothing wrong with it, but how can we make incremental changes to what we're already doing? So we've got a way that we operate. How can we improve that billing system a little bit? Or how can we improve the way that we're texting and communicating to our customers? Nothing wrong with that. But there's also something called future back. And so future back is really looking at what are our customers maybe going to be expecting and needing in 4 or 5 years, and thinking back, okay, how can we start addressing that? So if we're only focused on incremental improvements to our existing kind of customer design, then chances are we're just going to be keeping up with our competitors, which is critical, like we need to keep up with them, but we're certainly not going to be differentiating ourselves. And so looking at future back is what's the next kind of frontier in terms of what our customers or patients are going to be, and they may not even know what that is yet. I think a great example of that is Uber, right? Back in the day when there were only taxis, who would have thought that some organization that didn't even own any cars could literally take over the transportation, industry in the way that it did. And so that was very much future back looking of what could the future set of signature experiences look like for an organization. So if we're only focused on, okay, let's look at our journey map, and we're only focused on the touch points that are currently on there, then that leaves us susceptible to missing huge opportunities that are out there in the stratosphere that we may not have even considered. So both are important, but you're only going to be keeping up with the Joneses if you're just focused on incremental improvement.
Wow. Deep. That's quite deep, Jamey. And Future Back seems like the title of a new book, upcoming book.
Well, I
There's
didn't
clearly a lot.
come up with that, but there are there's a lot of good reading, as you know, a lot of good reading out there on CX and kind of thinking about it from non-traditional ways.
Lovely. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jamey. I can go on and on, but time doesn't wait for anyone. So really appreciate your presence on my show here. Really appreciate you sharing those deep insight nuggets with us, and this just makes us hungry for more. So hopefully soon enough I'll catch up with you in another episode. But till then, thank you so much once again, and really appreciate your presence and availability.
My pleasure. It's always great speaking with like-minded people, and I know your audience is like-minded too. So look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamey.
My pleasure.